Hello, everyone. Can I get someone in chat to tell me if you can hear and see me okay? Matt, I can see. Hi. Thanks, everyone. Oh, thanks. Thanks so much. Excellent. I'm so glad. Just gonna wait one more minute. I see some folks are trickling in, but we're gonna start pretty promptly at 2 o'clock. Okay, I'm going to get started. Thanks everyone for being here today. My name's Ayesha Barmania, and this is the first session of the Peterborough Audiocraft Festival. There's a number of other sessions coming up, and I'd encourage everyone to check out the schedule. Um, I am wearing kind of two hats right now as both the festival organizer as well as a presenter and a podcaster myself. Um, so I'm just gonna jump right in, and this is the behind the scenes of Peterborough Currents Budget Week podcast, specifically looking at the making of episode 5. And so I'm gonna take you through the process of how I made that whole episode from beginning to end. And so we're using Zoom webinar today. We're also live streaming on YouTube. Uh, we're only going to be able to take questions for the folks who are in Zoom right now. So if you would like to ask a question, I've got kind of all the different windows open on my left. I'll do my best to keep an eye on them. So you can send questions through the chat. You can also raise your hand, and I'll be able to allow you to turn on your microphone. So if you have a question throughout, feel free to just throw your hand up or put it in the chat, and I will do my best to notice. But if not, there's going to be a question period at the end, so feel free to hold until then or ask throughout. So just to start out, I will talk a little bit about what Peterborough Currents is and how our podcasts kind of fit into our mandate. So Peterborough Currents is a reader-supported news outlet for Peterborough, Ontario. We started as a podcast and then redeveloped ourselves last year into a local news website where we post articles and also do podcasts. Our goal is to do in-depth, community-oriented news for the Peterborough area. So we are not trying to compete with other daily newspapers by doing the kind of daily grind. We're trying to make news that goes a little bit deeper, and podcasts fit into that because I think podcasts are a great way to build that kind of human connection about things that are important in the news, as well as kind of take that time and take that space with your audience to really go deep and do a deep dive. So last year we decided to, as part of our website launch, organize a podcast experiment. I guess to back up a little bit, we crowdfunded over the summer last year to launch a website, and we just asked our readers to support us. And so part of that, we decided we wanted to just experiment to see whether folks would be interested in podcasts from us going forward. So the Budget Week series was a short series. It was 7 episodes, and our goals for it were to make our municipal budget reporting interesting and accessible and friendly to a lay audience. The municipal budget is pretty dense, and you need a lot of kind of background information to be able to understand it. But it's also this really, really important aspect of our community and how our city operates. So in designing our reporting around it, we wanted to try out a podcast to see if there was interest from our audience in listening to something like that about politics. That's maybe something dry, but also in depth. We also wanted to use this podcast to deliver information and context that would help listeners understand the latest developments in the municipal budget and the different reporting we were doing. And also just, like I was saying, experiment with whether our audience wanted this from us anymore. And we think we did, and I'll come back to how we did on these goals at the end of the slideshow. But just knowing going into it that those were our goals, and part of the planning the series and part of planning any podcast that I am involved with is articulating our goals for the series, or my goals at least. So I always go into a project like this with measurable things that I want to track. So I kind of approach podcasts the same way you would approach like any kind of project that you're taking seriously. And yeah, lay out the goals for the series and how we're going to get there. I can see a couple other folks joined. I'll just say that if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or raise your hand. I'm trying to keep an eye on that, and I can give you mic access if you ever want to hop in and ask a question or comment. But carrying on, so this was the first draft of what our series plan looked like. We kind of tongue-in-cheek, we're calling it the Budget Week Bonanza. That's not the title we ended up using. It just ended up being called the Budget Week Podcast. But I always lay out my focus for any of these kinds of projects. So the focus changes over time too, and it's kind of different in each episode. But laying out the focus I find to be a very useful exercise for just honing what we're going to talk about throughout the series. So you can see here, this is just a screenshot of our Google Doc where I lay out the focus as what is essential and what is discretionary in the city budget, what and what the decisions made for the 2021 budget mean for the residents of the city. So that's kind of like a goal that I would bring into each and every episode in the series. So the format, initially we planned on doing 10 interviews to be released, one on each day leading up to the budget week. We went back and revised that, but this is draft one. This is just the very, very first off rip what we were planning to do. And then I was just brainstorming topics in here about what each episode might cover. So COVID deficit, budget process, arts and culture funding. We did talk about, some of these ended up in the actual show, some of them did not. And here is the final version of the series plan. And this is also kind of like a living document for me where I'll go back and keep track of what is done, what's in progress. So this is how it looked at the very end of the project. So you can see the focus changed a little bit. So the focus became what the decisions made for the 2021 budget mean for the residents of the city, honing in on the impact of COVID-19 this year and the financial deficit, putting the strain on essential versus discretionary spending. So took the kind of basic ideas and focused it a little bit more and honed it and articulated the focus a bit clearer in this final version. The format became, so it also became a podcast and article series. So we decided to do podcasts as well as reporting on our website. Interview-based podcast episodes and articles rounding up budget items related to certain topics, examples, cycling and climate change. The article roundups ended up being these three: cycling, climate change, and housing. And then this is that same document, just scroll down. And the podcast episodes that ended up getting done were the budget process, an interview with the Finance Committee Chair, Dean Pappas, an interview with Sue Dida about arts and culture supports, social services, quote unquote, tape talk or talk tape. It's kind of an episode format in the biz where you're kind of talking and then you play a clip and talking and play a clip. Other episodes included the Greater Peterborough Climate Change Action Plan and the impact on the budget. And then the episode we're going to talk about right now in detail is the recap of the Finance Committee meetings. So we're going to get into that. And also in this planning doc, I included the timeline for rollout. So the trailer release, the announcement, and then the period for the episodes being released, and then the final episode. So I do a fair bit of planning when I'm thinking about podcast series. I think it's a really crucial step for setting the boundaries of your project, and it's important to know when your project's done, I think is a big thing. So I do spend a lot of time on the planning phase and making sure that I know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to execute it. I maybe go a little bit over the top on planning, but this is, You're here to learn how I make stuff. So getting into the actual episode planning, I also do a fair bit of episode planning on an episode to episode basis. And so we're looking at episode 5, the Finance Committee's recap. And so what Will and I did for that episode is we prepared by reading the budget documents, reading other news coverage, asking questions from community members rather, and making predictions amongst ourselves before the meetings happened about what might be the key kind of sticking points. So we kind of had a little bit of a game plan before the meetings happened and how we thought they might go. We also knew, so one of the people I talked to was Dean Pappas, the Finance Committee Chair, who, thanks, Mary, um, who who has restructured a lot of the budget process around making things accessible for citizens um, to engage. So he had made this change that on each night of budget week there would be a different kind of department being discussed. So we knew that going in. We knew that Monday, I think, was it's on the next page, so I'll just get into that in a second. But we knew going into it that there was some information we knew going into it that helped us make a game plan. And so that game plan also set out the division of labor and between Will, who's my co-publisher at Peterborough Currents, and we also set the date that we were going to record. The next kind of step in planning the episode was actually watching the Finance Committee meetings and recording the audio while they were happening, recording the audio while it was happening and making notes on paper that we could return to later. Yeah, and then coming out of the committee meetings, Will and I discussed back and forth what the key points were going to be that we were going to highlight in the episode. And then the last step is editing clips. And so I'm going to return to some of these in a bit more detail. So making the plan, this is a picture of what my actual paper notes looked like. We decided to structure the episode in a way that let us split up the work fairly equitably. So we both watched all of the evenings, but we divvied it up so that Will was taking the point on the Monday evening audio. He was gonna draw out the key points from Monday. I would draw out the key points from Tuesday, and Will would draw out the key points from Wednesday again. And so what this picture is showing is that I was going to be in charge of the intro. I would be leading the kind of discussion about Monday, so I would be asking Will questions. For the Tuesday content, Will would ask me about them, and for the Wednesday content, I would ask Will about that. And then we also wanted in the episode a little bit of information about what's coming next. What can we expect that wasn't addressed in those meetings? So that was things like the staff reports and finalizing the property tax increase. And then I would be also in charge of recording and drafting the extra. So the thanks for listening, music by May Hemingways, that kind of stuff. So this was the game plan going into it. Next step was to actually record the Finance Committee meetings. I use a tool called Broadcast using this tool, which is kind of tongue-in-cheek because the acronym is BUT. And so city council meetings are live streamed on their website, but they're not posted as on-demand videos until a few days later. So just to be confident that we were getting the audio in a good quality and in a way that we could have access to, we decided to record them just directly onto our computers. So BUT is able to record files. It's also able to live stream if that's something you're ever interested in. But BUT has a lot of settings for being able to save things on your computer, separate them out at set intervals. So I set it to separate out at hour-long intervals. You can set it to record in MP3 or WAV. And yeah, so you just configure it once and then you hit the record button and it's off to go until you hit stop, as long as your computer stays on. So that's what I used to record the actual meetings. This is a picture of the paper notes that I took while I was listening. I'm a big believer in having a paper notepad on my desk where I'm always taking notes and doodling and stuff. I've cropped out my doodles here though. So you can see that I've got Tuesday budget deliberations, and I'm keeping track of the time when things were brought up. So because but increments on an hourly basis, I know that the 6 o'clock recording, which is saved as like, November 16th, 1801 or whatever. In that recording, 40 minutes in, there might be a clip of Stephen Wright asking about debt financing. And then he also talks about the road resurfacing report. So this is kind of my way of just tracking quickly through, like, what are the key points that were brought up on the evening of. And at 7:14, the city staffer, Sheldon Freymond, brought up the KPMG report. And yeah, so those are my paper notes. I find them very, very useful in the next step, which is going through the audio and making clips. So I have a little bit of a live demo for you, and I'm just gonna, if you'll bear with me for a moment, I'm gonna share a different screen. Okay, here is Reaper. Okay, so you should be able to see my audio editing software, which is called Reaper. And I'll give you a quick little tutorial of how to do, how to make clips in Reaper. And I can still see the chat. So if I'm ever going too quickly, or if you want me to back up or show something again, just hop in chat. And I think I can still see if your hands go up or anything. So Reaper is a great audio editing suite. It's great if you're looking to upgrade to professional software as well. I use a lot of key commands. So I've got my keyboard in front of me, which you unfortunately can't see, but basically to make clips, so I've got a bunch of markers down. So this is something I would do if, so using those notes that I had before, I would go back through and say at 6:40, I would press the M key and put down a marker. And I know that's when Stephen Wright brought up whatever I said before, debt financing. So if this is the right clip, I'll go in and I'll listen.
At Crawford Drive, there's the road realignment of Crawford Drive, which is basically the only section of new road. And then
can someone actually write in chat whether you can hear the audio that's playing on my computer? He was just talking about road resurfacing. Okay, thanks, Hillary. Thanks, everybody. So say I want to use this clip talking about road resurfacing. So I'll put my cursor down, or I'll just play and then hit the space bar. And then I'll hit the S button, which makes a new clip boundary on the left side. And then I'll find the end of it. Let's say it's over here.
Okay, thank you. And we did kind of skip ahead a few pages with that. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
And then I'll hit the S key again to make a new split. And then I'll right click. I'm not sure if you can see the menu, but actually, instead of right clicking, I will render a new clip. So I can go into the menu and click render. And I'm not sure if you can see this actually. Hopefully you can. And I can save a new clip, and I'll save it as a wave, and I can put it in the folder that I want it to go in. And the source is selected media items. Great, thanks, Hermione. And then I'll hit render one file. And then it processed super quick because it was just a 30-second clip. And now it's saved as a clip for me to work into my other material. So I'll come back to how I would work it into a larger project in a second. But that's the basics of how I make a clip. Okay, and so we should be back in my slideshow now. So that was my very quick live Reaper demo for making clips. So once we have the clips ready, then we would go about scripting the episode. So because we had our game plan, Will and I knew that he was going to be in charge of making the clips for Monday and Wednesday, and I was in charge of making the clips for Tuesday, and then doing some prep work around what we were actually going to say about it. So this is the doc that we went into the recording session with, a screenshot of it. And we wanted it to sound fairly informal and chatty, with a lot of back and forth about what we had learned and what we were choosing to highlight. So we had a plan and we used this, but we also went off of it a fair bit. And that was intentional. I knew that that was going to happen going in, but I always do like to have my notes in front of me. And we're going to get to listen to the first couple minutes of the episode in a second, so you'll be able to, or actually no, at the end of the session. So you'll be able to hear how it turned out. So you can see here it's in this first screenshot of it, I've got a bunch of information that I wanted to make sure that I remembered. So what day that we were recording on, I knew I wanted to mention that just so that people could have a frame of reference for how late or how, if there were any late breaking developments when we were recording, and that might explain why we couldn't include some things. Some information about what actual document were they looking at. So there's like 3 budget books in the municipal budget process. And so at the finance committee meetings, they only look at the budget highlights book. So I wanted to make sure to say that. And then a little bit of background information for the audience about what happens at these finance committee meetings. So there's a chance to ask questions of staff, propose amendments, have a bit of a debate and a back and forth, and then propose amendments on this draft budget, which will get voted on by the council members that are there, as well as it'll get included in the notes that get sent to the actual city council meeting. So there's a second opportunity. Anyways, I wanted some of that information about what happens at these meetings in this intro. Also needed to introduce Will. And yeah, and then on the next kind of page, oops, we can see kind of our rough notes on how we were going into this episode. So we knew that this section ended up getting spoken about in the intro, but yeah, so Will was supposed to introduce, and he does do this, that Monday is all about corporate and legislative services budget, and the big conversation was around travel and conference expenses. And you can see my very great follow-up question, blah, 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 follow-up question. And the kind of segue into like, so we know things are pretty quiet, and so that means that the section of the draft budget is not really being contested and things aren't going to change. Am I right in saying that? I scripted that out, and it's probably pretty close to what I actually said. I go a little bit overboard on like scripting out my questions to sound exactly like how I might speak them. And then the segue into Will asking me about Tuesday, and these are my notes that I had prepared, and I knew I'd have a clip. So a lot of this is about setting up the clip so that it could be understood in its full context. Some of the stuff ended up getting cut. But we'll hear that in a second. So yeah, so a lot of this is about, so the reason I do a lot of this scripting is about thinking through the information and what is really key for people to understand. I find I need to put a lot of thought into, like I can't just say off the top of my head, what exactly you need to know about the budget. I need to do like a little bit of writing and a little bit of thinking to kind of anticipate like, okay, is this one thing is important, I think. Will it be important to everybody else? Or this was a main talking point, and there was a lot of exchange about road paving, and I think people are really interested in that. So doing some of this thinking in advance just helps me be able to speak it in the podcast in a natural way, and in a way that I'm not struggling to remember things, and I can just focus on articulating these points rather than just thinking them off the top of my head, if that makes any sense. And because I'm setting this up to interview myself, I can structure this however I want. I can do this in a way that sets me up well. So this is what it takes to set me up well, I think. And well, you can be the judge of whether that worked out well. The next step to making the episode is recording the episode. So Will and I met in this attic space. This is my like office slash attic slash recording studio. So Will came over here and we recorded basically at this desk. We had the notes printed out, and I have some pictures of how my desk looks from the other angle because I won't be able to show you live right now. Yeah. So with our plan in place, we met here and recorded. So I have two microphones that I use here. This is a Shure, on the left is a Shure SM7B. Will was using that one. And the one on the right is my Sennheiser shotgun mic, which I'm using right now. It has a pop filter on it. The Shure has like a little bit of a windscreen on it, which gets most of the pops. Basically, what the pop filter does is, and if I ever go like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, if I were to take it away, you would hear the kind of like popping sounds of my breath hitting the microphone. And so the pop filter catches basically all of them. And so I don't have to worry about big spikes in my audio. This is kind of one of the big things that like I recommend if you're going to spend $20 on upgrading your podcast or home recording space. I would say spend it on a pop filter because your audience will appreciate it because they don't have to have loud pops in their ears. We've also got it on the left-hand side. You can see the very critical cat in the background. She's my supervisor. Not really. Yeah, so these are the mics that I use, and they don't connect into computers directly. So what I need to do to be able to access the audio signal from these is use an audio interface. I got this one used at a pawn shop. I think Long & McQuaid and Mars Music also sell them. But basically how they work is this yellow cable plugs into my microphone, one microphone. I only had one microphone plugged in when I took this picture, but the second microphone would plug in by a second cable to this other hole here. And yeah, so basically it plugs in and I can adjust all these dials. Basically, I only need to worry about the bottom one, which is the gain level. The trim I also have set at a certain spot because I find that works better. The audio interface also provides an electrical power supply to the microphone, so it's a plus 48 volts. This may be too much information for some folks, but I think it's relevant for some folks who might want to be kind of upping their game. So there's a lot of audio setups where you're just plugging in like a USB microphone and it's plug and play. If you ever want to use like a more of like an outboard microphone, something a bit more professional, this is kind of the setup you have to use. So you have to be thinking about whether it has its own power supply in it from like a battery, or if it's plugging into a wall, for instance, or whether it can get its signal or if it can get its power supply from the XLR cable that's also transmitting the audio signal. So the ones I have do that, and I like the way they sound. This audio interface also lets you receive signal from the computer and feed it back in, which is kind of helpful for when I was recording the finance committee meetings. And yeah, so this audio interface is what gets the signal from the microphones, and then it transmits back to my computer via a USB cable. This is what my whole desk looks like. It's a little bit messy and crowded, but this is kind of the zoomed out version that you can see how it all kind of fits together. I maybe didn't frame it great, but the microphones that are sitting on the desk, they would plug into the audio interface. My laptop is over here on the right-hand side, and then it connects to the monitor, which is just the big one over here. So I only have one computer. It's just got two screens. And then the audio, if I'm not recording, will play out of the speakers. I turn the speakers off when I'm recording because otherwise it'll be feedback. And yeah, so once we start recording, I use Reaper to like actually record the file. So all that setup is just to get the audio file into the computer. And so I'm going to show you now, we're going to go back into Reaper, and I'll show you how the project actually looked on the day of. Great, so you should be looking at Reaper again. So this is the project file for episode 5 on the day that we recorded. So right after we recorded, we had these two versions of what we recorded. So we took one try and then we decided to do it again. That's what these two things are. And then what I did with the file after that, oops. Oh no, I might have messed this up. I might need to reopen this. My apologies. So I'm taking you through the undo history that I have saved in Reaper, so I can show you like what exactly this project looked like at various moments. So starting from those two recorded files on November 27th, I went in and I put them on two separate tracks. And then what I did was I created two new tracks within there, and I have them grouped so that I have take one on its own track, and then I busted take two into Ayesha and Will tracks, which are grouped under take two. And basically what I did next was I separated out the clips of Will talking and then the clips of me talking. And I color code them just for ease of looking through. And yeah, so you can see here that I've made clips and pulled them up of me talking, and then Will talking is in green. The clips aren't loaded in because I've unfortunately deleted those files, but I've also been, when I'm doing this, I'm also moving along through our plan and what we had talked about and adding in those clips that we had prepared. So when we were recording, we didn't actually listen to the clips that we work in, just because I was the only one with headphones and Will couldn't hear them. So we just recorded and talked around what we knew the clips sounded like, and then I've added them in after the fact. So let's skip ahead a couple hours. And I've gone through, at this point, by 11:15 a.m., I've gone through the whole thing and added all the clips and separated us all out. And I had decided that take two was the better of the two takes that we did, and just decided to work with that. I kept take one because I think at some points there might have been a better answer here and there for some of the things we talked about. So I would have pulled from take one and edited into the final cut of take two. In this version, we can see that I've added the music. So I'll just make it a little bit bigger. And so the music was very generously, well, we licensed it from the May Hemingways, which is a local folk band. And what I've done in here is used a fade. Oh, shoot. This might make me reload it again. It did, yeah. So I've done a fade so that it fades out, it plays, and I've used these the envelope track to set these different volume points so that it starts out fairly loud, plays for a little bit, and then ducks under my voice when that starts here, and then eventually fades out. So we can listen to a little bit of that. Hi, you're listening to Peterborough Currents. I'm Ayesha Barmania. And today, I'm also joined by the second half of Peterborough Currents, Will Pearson.
Hello.
How's it going, Will?
It's going pretty well. I feel a little bit bleary-eyed from watching, I think, like 10 hours of budget deliberations this week, but I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you and I stayed up for several nights of this past week until the late hour of 9:30 p.m. Watching finance committee meetings, and that's what we're going to dive into in this episode.
We watch them so you don't have to.
Yes, exactly.
Though I would encourage people to watch them. They're
So that's that was our intro, and you can kind of see it going back and forth. Reaper, it recorded our interview into one track, so we weren't separated out by our microphones. So basically, I did that manually in this taxing process, and basically the point of doing that is so that I could add effects to our voices individually. So I might need to reopen this. No. And oh no, I might have lost it. Oh well. Okay, so that's basically the editing process here, and so you can see that I've gone through and edited the envelopes so that we can do some volume control, and yeah, this is basically the editing process. And then I would have gone in and added some effects on my voice because I have like a little effects chain that I use for my voice just in every project, and yeah, that's editing in Reaper, and the whole edit probably took me about 5 hours, and then I would have sent it to Will for comments, and then done another edit after the fact. So to boil that down, basically, so you should be seeing my slides again. If you can't, let me know. So basically, to boil all that down, we recorded 2 takes of the interview, the back and forth with each other. I separated out each speaker and added the clips in. I color-coded it just for ease of use. I then edited out stumbles and then made editorial decisions on what to cut using that kind of split technique that I'd showed you before. I adjusted the volume using envelope tracks and fades, and then I sent the rough cut to Will for comments. Basically, with all that done, that's the podcast episode. And then what comes next is preparing the show for publication. And basically what that entails is mastering the audio. And I'll switch back into Reaper to show you how I do that. So I have a plugin for Reaper called Ulean. I don't know, I don't say it out loud very often, but it's called the Ulean Loudness Meter ii, and I paid for the Pro version. And basically what it does is it listens, it measures the audio for how loud is it going to be. So whereas you want to avoid peaking and you want to measure things in terms of decibels while you're working in the audio, there's also this measurement called loudness, which is used in radio and television and now podcasting a lot as well. And it basically tracks how loud it'll be to the ear rather than like measuring the electrical kind of output of a signal. It's measuring how loud it'll be back in in the airwaves. And so the kind of standard for podcasts, as I understand it, is -18 LUFS. There's a different standard for radio, but from what I've been reading, -18 is great for podcasts. And basically, if we listen to this, it'll start recording a graph and it'll show you how far from -18 your audio is. And in 2020, there was a pilot program that the city ran, and the city used a one-time federal gas tax increase to pay for this. The 2021 budget doesn't have that kind of grant funding coming in. So you can see in this graph that like kind of 5-second clip is doing pretty good. It kind of went up above. It went to like -16 for a while, but what matters more is like the kind of average over a few seconds. And so the average in this integrated, I use integrated. I'm not quite sure what the difference is between short-term and integrated, but integrated seems to work well. So I aim for -18 in the integrated kind of highlighted bit here. So what I would do next is I would listen to the whole episode again in Reaper and see whether there were any spots where it goes too high, gets too loud, or if it gets too quiet. The kind of rule of thumb for like background sounds and like background music that as I understand it, is like you kind of want it to be around -24, -30. So that's loud enough so that people can still hear it, but it's in the background. And your foreground stuff should be averaging around -18 LUFS. So we should be back in the slides now. And so coming into Peterborough Currents, like this series, previously when we were making our podcasts, we weren't using these kind of professional standards, but revamping Peterborough Currents as like a business that we were asking people to support. And now knowing these things, because I've got a fair bit more experience since when we first started Currents, I knew I wanted to be doing this kind of close mastering and close mixing of the show, just to bring it that kind of professional quality and to show people that we care about this kind of stuff. Like, I know this seems like a bit nerdy and a bit in depth for what we're doing, but I think there's a lot that can be gained for like just taking our show seriously on like a professional level and being professionals doing this thing. The next step in preparing for the show for publication is rendering it as an MP3 in Reaper. I also render it as a WAV, and I store that. I have like a hard drive where I archive all my work in WAV files. Then I drafted the headline and the body copy in Google Doc. I probably started this while I had sent it to Will for the rough cut to Will for comments. So this is a screenshot of the Google Doc. It's pretty close to probably what got published. And yeah, so head, HED stands for headline. And you can kind of see through here. So something to point out here is that we put TKTK for, it's kind of journalist shorthand for to come, or like kind of TBD. So I would have added these in once the episode was totally finished and uploaded. I would have gone back through, and so this section says, to hear the highlights from Monday's meeting about the city's corporate and legislative department, skip to minute to come. So I would have added that minute in once I knew what it was in the final version. You can also see here that there's an episode transcript. When I actually went to post it, I don't think I had the episode transcript ready yet. So I would have put a little note that said transcript to come. And then once the draft of the body is ready, I sent it to Will for comments and for a copy edit and proofread. Well, actually the proofread would come later, but then I posted it on the website with the audio. This is what it looks like on our website from the back end. So you can see the headlines the same, all the copy I think is the same, but you can see I've added skip to minute 2:15 for corporate and legislative services in the body. Might be a little small, but hopefully you can see it. And then the section to add the audio looks like this. Basically, you just upload a podcast file and then it auto loads how long it is, the duration, and you can input if you want the date it was recorded. Once that's done, I would have posted it. I would have sent it to Will to proofread, and then usually he would hit publish, or if he had any comments, he would send it to me, and then I would hit publish. And then the next step is to prepare the episode transcript. So it's fairly important to me to do these episode transcripts because we're doing reporting in these episodes, and I do want it to be available to folks who might be hard of hearing or deaf. So the episode transcript, we have a tool called Otter, which we pay for, which does an automated transcript, and then we have to go back through and clean it up. So you can see here, it took my first line as, "Hi, you're listening to Peterborough Currents. I'm Ashley Armenia," which isn't a bad effort, but yeah, something to fix. So that takes a fair bit of time. Like, honestly, cleaning up these transcripts is like a bunch of hours, but it is important to me that our work is accessible. And then once that transcript is done, then I would have updated the episode online with the transcript. And that's it. That podcast is out there, baby. And so we can listen to how that all turned out. Here's we'll listen to like the first maybe three minutes of that episode. Hi, you're listening to Peterborough Currents. I'm Ayesha Barmania. And today, I'm also joined by the second half of Peterborough Currents, Will Pearson.
Hello.
How's it going, Will?
It's going pretty well. I feel a little bit bleary-eyed from watching, I think, like 10 hours of budget deliberations this week, but I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you and I stayed up for several nights of this past week until the late hour of 9:30 p.m. Watching finance committee meetings, and that's what we're going to dive into in this episode.
We watch them so you don't have to.
Yes, exactly.
Though I would encourage people to watch them. They're boring, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just I know I'm a nerd, but I find them comforting somehow at the same time.
Yeah, it's nice to just, you hear in the news or you read these headlines, especially about the US, but it's nice to just listen to like the local boring government just work.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do today is just go through the highlights of what happened each evening during this past week. And we're recording this on Friday, November 27th for release on Monday. And so when we say this past week, we're talking about the week of Monday, November 23rd. Which is notoriously known as Budget Week. So this is the week where City Council sits as the Finance Committee and they go page by page through the draft budget for the next year. And here's a little bit of what that sounds like.
Page number 4, draft budget overview. Page number 5, gross expenditures versus net expenditures.
And so each councillor is given the opportunity to ask questions of city staff and propose amendments to the draft budget. And then they vote as a committee to adopt that amendment or not. So Will and I have kind of divvied up which day we're going to talk about. And so Will, you're going to go first and you're going to talk about Monday. So what happened on Monday?
Okay, so we should back up a little bit and say that the city is divided into 3 main departments. And so on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, we're each dedicated to one different department of the city. And so Monday's night meeting was for the Department of Corporate and Legislative Services.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we knew going into this budget week that some councillors were going to be on the hunt for savings because they were uncomfortable with how high the proposed increase to the tax rate was.
Mm-hmm.
And that did happen right off the bat, right at the beginning on Monday, with Councillor Andrew Beamer introducing a motion to cut by 10% the staff training budget line in all of the city's departments.
Because of the tough financial times, because of the virus, and because of how things are going to change after the virus with training and technology and education, that is an area where we can find some savings. So that's a 10% reduction in training and traveling in every department. So that's 182,000 savings.
And so this idea was met with a little bit of caution from folks around the council table and from city staff. Here's what the city's Commissioner of Corporate and Legislative Services, Richard Freeman, had to say.
A lot of the training, for instance, will be, there are professional accreditation that needs to be maintained. So there's a lot of training that is required on an ongoing basis to maintain those professional accreditations. So we just need to be very cognizant of that and not be compromising our ability to staff to do their job.
So that was almost a 4-minute clip from the episode. The whole episode is up on our website if you do want to hear it. But that takes you through from beginning to end of how Will and I made episode 5 of the Peterborough Currents Budget Week podcast. And we've got a bunch of time to answer some questions. I've got about 12 minutes. And if folks want to raise their hand, I can activate your mic, or if you prefer to use the chat feature, I've got that open. And happy to take any questions you might have. I also know there's a couple of folks in here who might be more of an expert on how to use stuff like Reaper than I am. So if anyone wants to hop on, Rob, and correct me on what I was doing wrong, that would be fine as well too. Anyone want to ask any questions? If you can't see the hand raise button, thanks, Rob. Rob says, no, that was about how I do it. So validation, amazing. The hand raise button should be kind of at the bottom of your screen and look like a little hand up. Why did I choose Reaper? So I used to use, at various points, I've used Audacity, I've used Adobe Audition, and I've come to settle on Reaper now because I find it very fully featured and very affordable. So I got to a point where, honestly, I was using a less than legal version of Adobe Audition, and I, as a professional trying to work in this field, I felt, and someone who like respects copyright and licensing and wanting to support independent producers of software as well, I decided that Reaper was a better option, and I could no longer use Adobe Audition in a way that I could support without spending, you know, like $500 a year or whatever it is on that license. So I wanted an option that was affordable as well as fully featured, and Reaper does that. It's a bit of a learning curve to get used to Reaper, but it does all of the things that it is professional grade software. So it does all of the things that the Adobe suite does. It does all of the things that, you know, I used to work at CBC. It does all the things that the software we used at CBC did and more. And so I've been very happy with it ever since. And it's a very affordable, I think it's $60 US for a license. And so for a 10-year license. And so yeah, I was at a point where I didn't want to be using Audacity for sure. I was at a point of being kind of sick of it. And I wanted to use something professional, but I didn't want to spend too much money. And I wanted like an actual license to use it. So that's why I chose Reaper, and I've been very happy with it. Yeah, thanks for the question, Trevor. So Hillary wrote in, that was great. I appreciated the images and breakdowns of the work. Also, it makes a lot of sense to me that scripting oral expression is good for sharer and listener. And I'm grateful to know that that care makes sense to you. Yeah, thanks. I'm trying to get more used to like doing more things off the cuff, but for something like reporting and this kind of content, I want to make sure that I'm getting everything right. And yeah, especially when we're trying to do something chatty and kind of in one take, having good notes makes sure that I can do that. So thanks. I appreciate that you appreciate it. Well, I'll maybe hold for another couple seconds, but I'll just say thanks for joining. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to, we have a new podcast out called The Neighbors Podcast. Season 1 is exploring the opioid overdose crisis. So if you want to check out our latest work, we're in all the major podcast apps, and you can check us out on our website as well, peterboroughcurrents.ca. And oh, and there's another question. So Rob says, do you aim for a particular length for an episode, and how do you plan for that, if so? Yeah, I definitely do. So these kinds of episodes for Peterborough Currents now, we're aiming for 20 to 30 minutes, generally aiming for exactly like 25. How do I plan for that is a good question. So basically that kind of comes in the planning phase as well. And I generally plan on, if I'm trying to edit things down to like 25, 20 minutes, I don't want my interview to be any longer than like 35. So that kind of goes for more of the like interview based stuff. Like this episode 5 was a bit more hands-on with me and Will, but if I'm just talking to if I'm talking to Dean Pappas, the finance committee chair, which I did, I knew that I wanted to talk to him for no more than 35 minutes because I'm going to edit out 5 to 10 for the final version. And so I do that especially for like, I try not to edit politicians for sure. I might not have even edited the Dean Pappas interview very much because of that. But I will plan on my questions. I'll only plan like a certain number. Like I think for the Dean Pappas episode, it would have been like 6 or 7. We talked about it in advance, so I do a pre-interview generally, where I'll talk to the person about what I want to ask them about. I'll let them know that I'm aiming for this amount of time as well. I'll say like, I'm going to do a light edit on this interview, but mostly what you say is going to make it in, just kind of clean up. I'm going to just clean it up a little bit. And we're going to aim for about 30 minutes is what I'll say to them. And so that they know, and they generally, everyone I've talked to has been very respectful of that. And yeah, and so they'll be able to like kind of keep an eye on the clock as well and know if, and I might even say to them up front too, like, I have like 7 questions for you, so that'll mean about like, you know, maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes per answer. And I'll just be very open about that and work with them on that kind of stuff as well. And then once I notice we're getting around like, you know, 27, 28 minutes in that interview, I'll be like, okay, so coming into like kind of our last question. So I'll signal to them that the interview is almost over, and that they should, you know, kind of, if there's anything they planned on talking about, bring it up now. And then that also leaves me enough time to ask them the question that I love to ask, which is there anything else that you wanted to bring up, or anything else that I should know about or should have asked about? That question generally brings great answers. So I always make sure that that's my last question. And then, yeah, so, and then in the edit, I'm also just executing that, where I'm just cleaning things up. I'm just trying to get out the repetitions. I'm trying to get to the most concise version of the answer. And yeah, there's some exceptions to that, where I'll talk to them for like a crazy long time and then edit it down. But I think everyone's better shorter is a maxim that I believe in. And people generally appreciate being edited a little bit to sound better, which is why I don't edit politicians very much. Yeah, I hope that answers that. Thanks for the question, Rob. And I will wrap it up about now, in case, unless there's any other questions that people want to throw in. I'm also very open to talking about this kind of stuff. So if there's any other questions after the fact, I'm on Twitter, email, you know how to get at me. And yeah, but other than that, I thought I had a thank you for coming slide, but I do not. So I'll just say it out loud. Thank you so much for coming. And I hope you appreciate the work that goes into it. And I hope it might inspire you to make your own podcasts. And I'd encourage you to check out the other presentations coming up in the Peterborough Audiocraft Festival later this afternoon, as well as later this week. I think there's going to be a lot of great presentations that show you the like diversity of options available to make podcasts. So yeah, I hope you're able to check that out. And thanks so much for coming. Bye, everyone.